Hello everyone, welcome to the new episode of Professionals Unplugged. I am your host Utkarsh Shukla, and let me introduce you to my guest Nadia. Nadia, thank you so much for joining in.
You're very welcome. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. So let's start with our very basic question. Can you please introduce our audience about yourself, like who you are, what work you do, anything about you?
Sure. So my name is Nadia, and I am from Toronto, Canada. I'm currently located in the UAE. I'm a mom. I'm an entrepreneur. I currently run an education support and education management company out of Canada. Yet my background is a bit different. I'm not a teacher. However, I am a corporate trainer who's been doing corporate training for quite a bit of time right now. And right now I work with all ages and all ages of students, and I'm happy to be doing that right now.
That's great. So what type of corporate training you are doing, and like what work is there in this role?
So as a corporate trainer, I've ran various courses, including workshops. So for leadership, management, entrepreneurship, and also anything related to managing teams, KPIs, how to look for them, and coaching, and business etiquette, anything related to softer skill. I was able to teach or run workshops.
That's amazing. So there is one thing, like people say the leaders are born, like they are born leaders. So do you think it is correct, like leadership quality can be developed in an individual? So what's your thought on the same?
So one of the things that we currently run is programs for kids from 4 years old to 12 years old. And these programs are specifically tailored to leadership, public speaking, and emotional intelligence. Are leaders born? Leaders are born of their environment, pretty much, right? So we are a product of our environment at the end of the day. So some people have the personality that's outgoing, fearless, and so on. And if the environment creates an opportunity for them to develop those skills, of course they're going to end up, continuing in that sort of way. Sometimes, people can also learn to acquire these skills to become, leaders as well. So yes, some are learned with some traits, but others are also trained to become better leaders as well.
Yeah, I think that's very interesting program, like making children learn from the age of 4, like from 4 to 12, as you mentioned, like creating environment around them so that they can learn how to react in such an environment, right? Or how to put traits in them. So that's really a nice initiative, and that's really a great thought to work on. Actually, I also never thought of it.
Yeah, no, that's the thing. It's not common because we always assume that leadership comes as you grow older. But the reality is that whatever environment we're brought up in, or whatever kind of experience, exposure we have, is who we kind of or either skills and traits that we carry on through our lives. So imagine you being 4-year-old and given an opportunity to work with kids that are 6-year-olds, 7-year-olds, and you're given an opportunity to say, okay, this is your turn. How would you like to run this play? So a lot of times when people think of leadership, they're always assuming it has to be something big. It has to be running a company or whatnot. And not necessarily. Leadership could be giving kids, 4-year-old, an opportunity for him to say, well, I choose this, and I'd like to run it this way, and giving them an opportunity to express their desires, express their ability to be self-dependent, and also to say, this is what I like, giving them an opportunity and choices for them to learn that they have a choice in life as well. So it's a really, really cool and fun activity and workshop that we're at.
Correct. I think I totally agree with you upon this. Like actively or passively, the environment that we live in, it has an impact on us, right? Either psychology, it's either a psychological effect that we have from the surroundings that we have belong to, and at the end, there is a taste in every person of the surroundings where they have grown up, right? I think that's the best thing that anyone can do to indulge them in such an activities where they can learn to be more of leaders, not type of a leader as a corporate leader, I can say, but a leader as a person, right? Where you can learn how to grow as an individual, correct?
Yes. So what I find a lot of times, whether while I was working a corporate trainer or as I'm working right now, is that people a lot of times confuse management with leadership, right? In a corporate aspect, we've got maybe 10, 20 people that we're currently managing. It doesn't necessarily mean that we're leading, right? So what are some of the aspects of being a leader? So we cover those with these kids. We explain some aspects, some concepts of leadership, but we sort of incorporate them into a game, and then they play those games. But at the same time, we're kind of teaching them, what to look for, what to do, sort of like what are some of the things that it makes them better leaders in the future. Whether that's at home or at school with their friends, it could be around their siblings. So just giving them that confidence. So we call it the building block, giving them those building blocks to get them to where they need to be. And doesn't matter where they go, whether it's at school or whatnot, they can use those skills to better themselves, right? So one of the things that we also found with kids that are a lot of times struggling at school is it's not for lack of intelligence. Every child is intelligent in their own way. Like I'm sure you probably know, we all learn in different methods, and they learn in different methods. But because they don't have that self-confidence and ability to fall and get up, dust themselves, and get on with it, the moment they hit one block, all their abilities or all their confidence just completely shatters. And building that up, it takes forever, because one of the reasons why it takes forever as well is that they don't even know why they're feeling that way. So they do, maybe they're struggling with one subject in one course, and the rest of their course that they've been doing really well on also start to kind of lag behind. So we found that there's actually direct correlation between self-confidence, ability to manage emotions, and so being, emotionally intelligent, has directly, it has direct relation to the ability to do well, whether they're doing extremely well at, subjects, or they're struggling. But if they're struggling, why am I struggling? Finding out why they're struggling, giving them those tools for them to figure out their way around things, as opposed to waiting for somebody else to come and save them, right? So with School is Easy, which I'm directing right now, we call it empowering kids to be their own heroes at the end of the day.
That's really a great initiative, I think, to help children gain their confidence, because once it is lost, it's very difficult to get back on the track. And sometimes if a child fails on a particular subject, rather than asking them why, we put more pressure on them, like, hey, you need to do good on it, rather than knowing the reason behind it, correct? So I think that's really a great initiative. And one thing also you have mentioned, like there is a difference between managing people and leading people, right? So can you just elaborate more on it, like how there is a difference between management and leadership? Because most of the people, they think both of them are synonyms, like leadership and management. But I think there is a difference that we've mentioned. So just can you add a few more points on this?
Sure. So I come from a military background as well. So I've served as a military engineer for about 7 years. And one of the things that I've learned is that when you manage a team, you create a very well structured sort of framework, and you say, there it is, everybody abides by it, right? So a lot of times you don't have a play room, to kind of work around things. There's a book, this is what the book says, that's it, we stick to it. And it makes it a lot difficult for a leader to kind of function around that. When you're a leader, you're not just considering a framework, but rather you're considering the people that you're working with. You're considering your environment, right? You're considering your resources. What do I have, whether that's human resources or otherwise? And then you're looking at the environment you're working in. Certain aspects of leadership might work in certain environment and certain industry, but it might not work in others, right? Are you emotionally, aware of human elements of that as well, right? Like, so if you're, leading a team in North America and you've been, leading a successful team and you've done really well, and then you come to this part of the world where you've got, people coming from various places in the world, various cultures, religions, mindsets. It doesn't necessarily mean that framework would fit into this part of the world. Right? So yeah, so being a leader is just like being, mindful enough to say, all right, I've got, 9 people that are working under me, and they come, from 9 different places, 9 different cultures, 9 different mindsets, and how do I work around all these rules that have been set out for me to grow this business or to lead this team, right? So I think one of the main aspects of being a leader is being emotionally intelligent, and also being cultured in terms of human emotions, human intelligence, and the human part of whatever it is that you're doing, right? Because a framework is just a framework, but at the same time, if you're working with people, I think you have to kind of sometimes look into the people and call it, resources.
Totally agree with it. So let's jump to our next question. So I think you might be having a lot of stories to share because the profession you are working in, and you also mentioned you work with theatre. So any story you want to share with us, like any particular story that you think should be heard by the people all over the world?
So yeah, I've got a few, but I will definitely share a story that I recently came across. Well, not a story, but rather, experience.
Yeah.
A few months ago, actually, that was it was exactly a year ago. A parent reached out to us and saying, his child is struggling. He's in grade 11. We don't know why he's struggling, because he's a very bright, student or child, and we don't know what to do, And this student is literally having panic attacks because he was struggling, and you would think he was struggling in all his subjects. No, he was only struggling with one subject, but because of the impact that one subject had on his emotional, state and his psychological state, he was starting to fail his grades. And the reason why the parents got in touch with us is that, we need tutors, and a lot of times my answer to parents always is, why do you need a tutor? And I said, well, our child is struggling. And I said, why is he struggling? And I said, well, maybe the subject is very difficult for him. And I said, okay, is he struggling on his other subjects? They said he wasn't, but he is now. So for me, that was an indication of him kind of, going into anxiety, because of, the one subject. We had to kind of sit down with him and literally just work on his mindset. So, why are you struggling with math? Because you're doing so well in math. You were doing so well in math. Oh, I don't know, I know them, but so we realized that he was actually starting to get exam anxieties. So every time he sits in front of his exam, his test, he completely just falls apart. And it has nothing to do with his knowledge or nothing to do with his abilities. Okay. So we start working on his mindset. Obviously, we did assign a few tutors to work on each of his subjects, just to give him, to build that confidence, his abilities. And I remember he finished his year with, I think, 3.62 GPA. And he's just like, I don't know how I got these. And I said, well, what do you think happened? And I remember him saying, I don't know, I was really, really struggling, and then all of a sudden I'm doing actually well. And so a lot of times when it comes to education, that I find is that it has nothing to do with the child's disability or their intelligence, but rather environment or something, outside of that, So whenever we sit down with parents, we always say, we want to know the full concept of, or we need to understand the whole aspect of this child or this student's life, so that we can find a way to give them resources that will help them to get to where they need to be. So yeah, so that's one of my highlights of this year for sure.
That's amazing. I think it is something similar to our body as well. Like if one of our body part is not working fine, or if there is an injury on any one part, but it affects at the end our whole system, right? The same thing goes with our mind as well. If we know we are struggling with one of the subjects, somehow either actively or passively, it is affecting the whole thing, correct? So I think that's the main thing to find out, like that one thing that is affecting the whole lot, right? So
It is, and I think in addition to that, I think it also has a lot to do with the way we parent our kids these days, because I'm a parent as well. So one of our first instinct is to kind of remove all blocks. I want my child to succeed, and yet we sometimes, I think, confuse success with just a destination. I just want them to get to that point. Okay, they get to that point, and then what?
correct.
Because these kids have no idea why they're doing some of the course they're doing. They have no idea why they're going to these universities, because the plan was just you're supposed to get an A or a B, or if B, oh God forbid, you're supposed to get A's, you're supposed to go to college or university, you're supposed to graduate, and then what?
Yeah.
So when they kind of hit a plot one, among all these different things in their lives, then everything falls apart because they have no idea how to solve it. So a lot of times we think we should deprive our kids of an ability or an opportunity for them to develop these skills that will help them to solve problems, to help them become creative, and that helps them be an individual, because we always trying to, find a box that fits all. Your brother is so smart. Why aren't you smart? Your sister is so smart. Why aren't you smart? Because we somehow identify smartness by your grades at school.
By grades or by comparing to each other.
Right, because I'm a parent, and I a lot of times I struggle with it as well, and I say, wait, what am I doing? Sometimes I'm like, my first instinct is like, oh no, I'm gonna go, save, the day, and I'm like, wait, so I think it has a lot to do with the way we do things as well. So yeah.
I agree with you on that. So last question I would like to ask you, last but not the least, but what is your dream right now? I know it will be related to this initiative that you have. So what's the bigger picture right
now? So the bigger picture right now is literally to work toward a program that works for individual students, because like I said, we're used to an education system where one fits all. You're in a classroom with 22 other students, and you're expected to perform at that level, and that's one level. However, we find that not only that is not realistic, all 22 students in that classroom learn differently. Yet we expect them to perform the same way, we expect them to get the same grade, and we expect them to understand it in the same way. In addition to that, I think in many ways we're also kind of becoming sort of like tunnel vision, where our focus is only grades, and we forget the other aspects of our kids' lives. That's creativity, right? It could be art, it could be music, their ability to to interact with other people. So we kind of exclude them into sort of a box, and we say you have to perform in this level, you have to do these, and you have to do that. So my dream literally is to work with every child in their own space, in their own capacity, and focus on that student as one student, and build them to be their own heroes. I always tell my team that I don't want to have to work with one student for more than a year or two.
That's great.
Because otherwise it's just we should be able to teach them the basics of what they need by a year or two to get them to a certain point, and then let them figure the rest of them out. So truly my dream is to create a program with a school that allows students to be who they are as an individual, while they're learning all these things they need, whether that's math, science and English, and allow them to shine as an individual without having to compare themselves with everybody else in the classroom.
I think that's great thing to mention. Like as you said, you wanted to monitor them or help them for a year, and not more than that, because there might be a condition where they might become dependent on you or your team, right? So having the plan only for a year or so, it's a great idea, so that they know how to be independent after that, rather than being dependent on your team or the teacher that they've been assigned to, right?
Right. And it also gives you a great amount of time to kind of help them sort of like extend their wings, because right now everybody's just in one space and saying like, well, tell me what to do, show me what to do. I'm going to try and let's see what happens,
Correct.
So a lot of times, like literally getting them out of that shell they've created, around them as protection, so they don't have to fail, they don't have to be embarrassed, they don't have to, disappoint people, and just get them out and say, go try and see what happens. So I remember telling one of our students recently, it was him and his mom were sitting down and we're having breakfast, and I asked, so what's the plan for this year? And he said, oh, I'm looking to get all A's. And then I listened to him and I told him, can I give you an advice? And he says, yes, please learn to fail. And then the mom completely went, what? What do you mean, learn to fail? He's not failing. And then I realized that a failure is always associated with, negativity.
Negative.
As opposed to is an opportunity for you to go back, reassess, and say, okay, well, I know these, but I don't know these. So let me learn how to do these, right? So it's always an opportunity for you to learn and to grow and to progress. So yeah, that was a shocking moment for the mom, I think, as opposed to anything else. But then I had to explain myself, and he says, okay, never thought of it that way. So, but yeah.
I think that's a great point to end this interview, where you should also learn how to fail and how to come back from the setbacks as well, because that's the most important thing in life. Because
right, no one ever teaches you how to fail.
Correct.
Right?
Correct.
And no one ever tells you how many times you've failed, right?
Yeah.
But we live in a society. People always talk about how many times they've succeeded or who's succeeding, how well they're doing. But nobody ever says, yes, I've got it once, but I've failed 10 times or I've failed 20 times to get it once right? So because we kind of only tell one side of the story or part of our story, a lot of times people miss the most important part that got us to where we are, where, the struggles or the ups and downs and so on. So I always tell our students, learn to fail. Because right now you're in a place where you've got mom, dad, everybody else around you to support you. If you learn to fail now, down in the line, failing is not something you should be ashamed of. It's something that you actually might end up priding yourself in. I tried that and I failed miserably. All right, let's go back and have a look. What did I do right and what did I not do right? So how can I improve that? Right. So yeah, that's my mindset, anyways.
Thanks, Nadia. Thank you so much. I think it was very insightful session talking to you. So it was great. Thank you so much for joining in.
You.
Thank you.
You as well. Thank you. And thank you for having me.